I trusted her. More than anyone in the world. More than my family. More than my closest friends. More than I even trusted myself. That's the terrifying thing about trust. It can make you blind, make you vulnerable, make you walk into the fire thinking it's just a warm glow. Her name was Julia. She wasn't perfect. She was reckless, impulsive, and selfish in ways I sometimes hated. But I loved her anyway. Or maybe not love. Maybe it was a dangerous mix of dependency, hope, and desperation. She had a smile that could disarm any argument, a laugh that felt like home, and a way of looking at you that made you believe you were the most important person in the world, at least for that moment. We met in high school, two misfits in a crowd of people too busy pretending to be perfect. Over time, we became inseparable. She was the chaos to my order, the spark to my caution. I liked planning. She liked adventure. I liked small steps. She liked leaps. Somehow, we balanced each other. Years passed. And as life pushed us into adulthood, that balance became more fragile. We were both dreaming of a life far from here, far from the monotony of our small town, far from the endless cycle of bills and disappointments, far from everything that reminded us we were ordinary. And we made a pact. One day, we would leave. Together. We would see the world. Paris. Tokyo. Bali. Anywhere but here. But dreams don't pay for themselves. They require sacrifices, discipline, and trust. And I trusted her. I saved every penny I could spare. I sold the things I loved, my old camera, my collection of rare books, even the guitar that had been my companion since I was 12. I worked overtime shifts, extra hours, side gigs. Every cent went into the fund we called our escape. And all the while, she laughed, teased, and promised we were getting closer to freedom with every dollar saved. I can't wait, she said one evening, leaning against my shoulder as we scrolled through videos of Venice canals and Tokyo streets. Just a few more months, and we're gone. Just you and me. Her words felt like magic, wrapping around my heart, warming the cold parts of me I didn't show anyone. I believed her. I believed that she believed me. But she was lying. I didn't see it. Not yet. The night it happened started like any other. Quiet, unassuming, the kind of night that lulls you into thinking nothing bad could ever happen here, in this safe little apartment we shared. We ordered Chinese takeout, laughed over stories from our past, joked about packing bags and disappearing in the middle of the night. She poured us both a glass of wine. A toast to our future, she said. I clinked my glass against hers. I didn't know that glass held my death. She smiled. Too sweetly. Too carefully. I didn't notice the glint in her eyes, the calculation behind the tenderness. I took a sip, trusting her like a fool trusts the sun to rise. Then, the world began to tilt. At first, it was subtle. My stomach twisted. A wave of dizziness washed over me. I laughed it off, blaming the wine. But then my heart raced, my limbs grew heavy, and I fell to the floor. I tried to call her name, but my voice was gone. I tried to reach for my phone, but my hands wouldn't obey. I felt her kneel beside me. Her hands were gentle on my arms. She whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't want it to hurt like this." Her words were a lie. I could feel it, even as my body betrayed me. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't trying to save me. She was checking my phone. She was counting, calculating, waiting. The betrayal hit harder than the poison. Not just because she was killing me, but because she did it with calm, with patience, with premeditation. Every dream we ever shared, every promise, every laugh, it was all just a stepping stone for her plan. I tried to speak, to plead, to remind her that we were partners in this life, that we were supposed to escape together. But my lips wouldn't move. My mind screamed at me to wake up, to stop this, to fight, but my body was gone. My life was draining in slow motion. As the last breath left my lungs, I saw her one final time, not crying, not panicked, not even remorseful. Just focused. Cold. Determined. She had done what she came to do. And then, she left. Days passed. Or maybe hours, I couldn't tell. I was dead. My body was cold, lifeless, but my mind lingered, hovering above the scene, watching her leave, watching her disappear into the night with my dreams, my money, my future. When they found me, they called it a tragic accident. Food poisoning, they said. A simple, cruel twist of fate. My death was neat, unremarkable, forgotten within weeks. But I wasn't gone. Not entirely. I lingered, trapped in a strange in-between. Watching, feeling, waiting. My anger burned hotter than anything I had ever known in life. Every detail of her betrayal etched itself into my memory. The way she smiled, the way she whispered, the way she looked at the world as if it owed her everything. And yet, something strange happened. Alongside the rage, there was clarity. For the first time, I saw her completely. Not the Julia I loved, not the Julia I trusted, but the Julia who had chosen greed over love, ambition over humanity. I realized she hadn't just taken my life. She had also set herself on a path I could now observe without interference. I watched her at the airport, tickets in hand, suitcase rolling beside her. She posted pictures online, showing the world she was living our dream. Paris streets, Bali beaches, Tokyo lights. Her smile was flawless. Her eyes, hollow. She didn't know yet, but the weight of her actions would follow her. Always. She believed she had won. But I realized something powerful. Her victory was a lie. And my death, my supposed defeat, was only the beginning. Because I was reborn in observation. A witness to her unraveling. I could see the cracks forming where once there were none. Every choice she made, every lie, every theft of trust, it all began to accumulate. And she didn't even know it yet. The betrayal was complete. The dream stolen. But the real story, the one she could never escape, was just beginning. And I was ready to watch it all unfold. Death wasn't darkness. At least, not at first. I expected it to be. I had imagined everything, black voids, cold emptiness, nothingness. But instead, it was clarity. Sharp, vivid, almost painful in its precision. I felt weightless, unbound, as if every burden my body had carried in life had been lifted. My last breath had not been a surrender. It had been an awakening. I could see everything. Hear everything. Feel everything. I rose above my lifeless body on the floor, staring down at the scene I had once called home. The faint flicker of the streetlights through the window painted long shadows across the floor. The wine glass I had trusted so blindly still sat near the edge of the table, a silent instrument of betrayal. And she knelt beside me, serene, composed, as if this were an ordinary Tuesday night, not a moment that would define both our lives forever. I expected panic. I expected tears. A scream, a call to help, a desperate plea for mercy. Nothing. She wasn't saving me. She was counting. Counting my money. Checking my phone. Calculating how much she had just gained, how far she could stretch it, and how quickly she could disappear with it. Every second she lingered over my death was proof. She had planned this. Every whispered apology was theater, every tearless glance a lie. I wanted to scream. I wanted to reach through the ether and shake her, warn her, make her understand the magnitude of what she had done. But my voice was gone. My body, my hands, even my lungs, all absent. Only my awareness remained. I floated, unseen, unheard, but painfully conscious. 4 days, I lingered. Watching her navigate a world she had once shared with me. Watching her adjust to the freedom she thought she had purchased with my life. The surrealness of it all was staggering. She had believed that killing me would grant her everything. Freedom. Money. Dreams. The world itself. But I saw it already. She had bought nothing but a new cage. A cage built from guilt, fear, and the slow, inevitable collapse of her own choices. I watched her at the airport, suitcase in hand, smiling for the camera. Her posts on social media were flawless. Sunsets, city lights, hotel rooms with pristine sheets. Her followers saw a life of luxury, adventure, success. But I saw the tremor in her hand as she took the photos. The forced tilt of her head. The hollow glimmer behind her eyes. I could feel her panic, buried beneath layers of pretense, already whispering that all was not right. She didn't hear me. She couldn't see me. She couldn't know I existed, yet. But I could see her clearly. Every small lie she told herself. Every stolen cent she counted without guilt. Every reckless choice she made to survive in a world she had decided to take for herself. I learned something important during those first nights of my new existence. Anger alone was not enough. Rage could not unmake her. Revenge through physical intervention was impossible. But patience, observation, and the unfolding of consequences, that was power. That was something she could not escape. And so I watched. I watched her stay in Paris, then Rome, then Bali. She checked into fancy hotels, stayed in suites she couldn't afford, dined in restaurants that served more glamour than food. I watched her swipe cards that weren't hers, borrow money from strangers she barely knew, lie to friends, seduce strangers for temporary comfort. Every act was a thread pulling her deeper into her own undoing. I followed her silently, always unseen. I could feel the panic build in her chest whenever a stranger noticed her lies, whenever a hotel clerk questioned her payment, whenever someone called her bluff. She was building her own prison, and I was the witness to its construction. She started hearing things. Or at least, she thought she did. A whisper here, a shadow there. Small, fleeting moments of unease. Dreams she couldn't remember upon waking, but left her with a pit in her stomach that refused to settle. Her paranoia grew, as did her drinking. She sought solace in fleeting pleasures, meaningless encounters, and luxuries she could barely afford. Each temporary distraction left her emptier, hungrier, more desperate. The irony was exquisite. She had killed me for travel money, for a taste of freedom, for a life she believed would be hers alone. And yet, every choice she made after that moment was carving out a new kind of prison. Her life became a constant cycle of running and hiding. She sought the comfort of money, but money alone could not silence the whispers of guilt she could no longer deny. She sought admiration, but no one could truly admire a woman who had stolen life from someone she claimed to love. She sought adventure, but every step forward felt like sinking into quicksand. And I watched. I did not seek revenge in the ordinary sense. I did not whisper in her ear, make her stumble, or curse her. I simply existed. I existed as the truth she could not face, the life she had destroyed, and the witness to every misstep, every falter, every moment of self-destruction. My presence was a weight she could not feel, a shadow she could not see, a mirror she could not look into. The first time she cried alone, I was there. Not physically, of course. But in that moment, I felt the raw, unfiltered despair she had tried so desperately to ignore. Her makeup was smudged, her hair tangled, and she whispered my name into the darkness of a hotel room far from home. Not because she missed me. Not because she mourned the life we had promised each other. But because she was beginning to realize that freedom without conscience is a cage. That ambition without morality is a prison. That life taken from another is a burden carried only by the one who did the taking. And so I watched, day by day, city by city. Paris. Rome. Bali. Each step was a lesson, each lie a chain, each stolen luxury a weight that pressed her down further. She had thought she was buying happiness, but all she purchased was the slow, creeping realization that nothing could erase what she had done. I began to understand the real power of death, not as an end, but as a beginning. Not as punishment, but as revelation. She thought she had escaped, but in truth, she was ensnared. And I was reborn not in flesh, but in awareness. I was alive in the way that mattered most, as the eternal witness to the consequences of betrayal. By the time she returned home, months later, she was already unrecognizable. Gone was the confident, smiling girl who had promised me the world. In her place was a woman hollowed out by her own choices. Her steps were cautious. Her words measured. Her charm, once effortless, now forced. She had everything she thought she wanted: money, travel, experiences, but she was shackled by the weight of her own deeds. I realized then, fully and finally, that I did not need to interfere. I did not need to punish her physically, because life itself had become her executioner. Every mistake she made, every opportunity she lost, every lie she told, It was a spiral she could not escape. And I, reborn in clarity, watched it unfold like the cruelest, most beautiful story ever told. Death had not ended me. It had liberated me. It had given me vision, patience, and the ultimate power, the ability to witness truth without needing to act, to see consequences play out in their purest form, and to understand that the real punishment is not suffering inflicted by others, but the suffering we bring upon ourselves when we betray everything we once held sacred. I had been killed for travel money, but she had traded her peace, her dignity, her soul, and I was there to witness every step. And in that witnessing, I found a dark kind of satisfaction. Because her freedom, her luxury, her dreams, all of it came at the cost of living with what she had become. And I was free. She thought she had won. She believed that by taking my life, by taking the money, by taking the escape we had promised each other, she had achieved freedom. But freedom isn't something you steal, it's something you earn. And she had built her life on a foundation of lies, greed, and betrayal. That foundation was already cracking. I could see it, smell it, feel it as she moved through the cities that had once been our shared dream. Paris first. The city of light. The city of romance. She had posted the pictures online, smiling on the Pont Alexandre 3 bridge, holding coffee cups at sidewalk cafes, her laughter frozen in time for thousands of followers to admire. But her smile, in reality, was brittle. Her laughter, in reality, was hollow. She walked the streets with a nervous energy, a tension in her shoulders she tried to mask with designer clothes and careful posture. She would glance over her shoulder too often, checking her phone, counting her money, calculating the next move. Every action screamed of fear disguised as confidence. Rome was worse. The grandeur of the ancient city should have inspired awe, but for her, it became a backdrop for anxiety. She checked into the hotel with borrowed credit cards, using fake names, charming the staff with rehearsed apologies and smiles. Every night she drank too much, trying to drown the guilt, trying to erase the memory of my lifeless body on the floor, trying to convince herself she had made the right choice. And Bali. Oh, Bali. She thought the beaches, the sunsets, the turquoise waves, would heal her. That paradise would make her feel alive again. But paradise has a cruel way of exposing the truth. She would walk along the sand, phone in hand, capturing perfect shots of herself for social media, while internally she was unraveling. Nights were the hardest. Alone in a villa far too large, surrounded by luxury she couldn't afford, she would hear the whispers of what she had done. Dreams haunted her, not dreams of me, not even dreams of revenge, but dreams of herself as the person she had become. Money ran out faster than she expected. Luxury hotels, private tours, designer shopping, all of it came with a cost, and she hadn't anticipated the reality. She began lying more openly, borrowing money from strangers she barely knew, selling things she didn't own, promising repayment she couldn't deliver. Every deceit pushed her further down a path she could not return from. And every step she took was observed. I saw it all, silent and invisible, a witness to her downfall without ever needing to interfere. Her behavior changed. Friends who had once admired her began to notice cracks. She was late to meetings, missed calls, failed to respond to texts. Lies piled on lies. One night, she dated a man she didn't like, only for temporary comfort, only to maintain appearances in a world that demanded perfection. Another night, she argued with a shopkeeper over a bill she couldn't pay. Every action chipped away at her sense of self, leaving a hollow, fragile shell behind. The irony was intoxicating. She had killed me to pursue freedom, but freedom is not absence of consequence. It is the presence of responsibility. And she had left responsibility behind like a discarded coat. The world around her became a mirror reflecting the truth she tried to escape, a truth she could no longer deny. She began hearing voices. Or perhaps she imagined them, I cannot be sure. Shadows moved differently when she wasn't looking, whispers floated through empty hotel rooms, and in the quiet of the night, she would wake screaming, trembling, whispering apologies into the darkness. Not for me, not yet, but for herself, for the choices that had led her here. Guilt has a way of finding cracks, and hers were everywhere. Her health suffered. Stress consumed her body, and the alcohol she leaned on for comfort became poison. Sleep evaded her. She skipped meals to save money she no longer had. She lost weight, lost confidence, lost the spark that had drawn me to her in the first place. Her skin dulled, her eyes darkened, and the effortless charm that once captivated everyone now seemed forced, strained, like a mask she could no longer wear convincingly. Social media, once her refuge, became a weapon against her. She posted images of herself smiling in exotic locales, but the comments she received were filled with subtle criticisms, people noting inconsistencies, suspicious of her lavish lifestyle. Each notification became a hammer striking her fragile sense of security. Every like and comment became a reminder that the world was watching, judging, and that the life she had stolen was never truly hers to begin with. And then, the relationships began to collapse. The men she dated for convenience abandoned her. Friends who had once relied on her loyalty no longer trusted her. The network of people who had once surrounded her with admiration and attention shrank, leaving her isolated, dependent only on her own wits, and the wits she had used so recklessly to manipulate everyone else. She was alone. And I watched it all, silent, invisible, relentless. The tipping point came gradually. Small mistakes accumulated into disasters. Payments missed, hotels refusing her, flights cancelled because of mismanagement, confrontations with locals she had offended. Each incident chipped away at her confidence, eroded her sense of control, and forced her to confront the consequences of the person she had chosen to become. I began to see patterns, the natural consequences of her actions. Every lie she told, every shortcut she took, every ethical line she crossed returned to her like a boomerang. Her life, once carefully curated to appear perfect, began to spiral. And the realization slowly dawned on her: she had been living in a fantasy funded by my life, and that fantasy could not last. Reality would always catch up. By the time she returned home, her wealth gone, her charm diminished, and her confidence shattered, the transformation was undeniable. She was no longer the woman I had known, no longer the girl who had promised me the world. She was hollowed out, fragile, haunted by her own choices. Her reflection in the mirror was unrecognizable, a stranger staring back at her. She had traded love and trust for material gain, and now she was left to live with the consequences. And I, reborn in clarity and observation, remained by her side in every moment. Not to torment her, not to haunt her in the traditional sense, but to witness, to watch, to see the truth of her actions unfold without interference. Every misstep, every failure, every small unraveling was mine to see. Every choice she made reinforced the lesson that she could never escape the life she had taken from me. She had killed me for money, for adventure, for freedom. But she had not accounted for the cost of a soul weighed down by guilt and paranoia. Every step she took toward a new life brought her deeper into her own undoing. Every borrowed dollar, every manipulated friend, every moment of reckless indulgence was a thread in the web she had spun around herself. And it was tightening with every passing day. I realized something profound in those months. True punishment does not come from others. It comes from the life we create through our choices, from the consequences that follow, and from the realization that we cannot escape who we have become. She was experiencing this in its purest, most exquisite form. And I was there to witness it, reborn and free from the limitations of mortality. Her downfall was not a single event. It was a slow, intricate, psychological collapse, the kind that poisons every joy, taints every pleasure, and makes every achievement feel hollow. And as she walked through the cities of her stolen dreams, as she navigated the challenges she had thought she could bypass, I understood fully that this was her punishment. She had created it herself. I had only watched. And watching her unravel brought a quiet satisfaction that no vengeance could ever match. She had traded my life for freedom, but what she gained was a lifetime trapped with herself. Every decision she made, every misstep, every lapse in judgment, was a reminder that she could never reclaim what she had taken. I had been killed for travel money. She would live with the cost forever. When she returned home, she was unrecognizable. Gone was the confident woman who had once charmed hotel clerks in Rome, posted flawless selfies from Paris, and laughed with reckless abandon. In her place was someone hollowed out, fragile, and burdened by the weight of choices she could no longer deny. She had thought killing me for money, for adventure, for freedom, would be her ultimate victory. But she had underestimated the most unforgiving force of all, herself. The first signs were subtle. Sleepless nights. Trembling hands. Panic attacks she blamed on stress. She tried to maintain the facade of control, but the cracks were growing too wide to hide. Small mistakes turned into humiliations. Phone calls she missed led to angry messages from people she had borrowed money from. Bills she thought she had covered remained unpaid. Friends she had manipulated distanced themselves. Every action she took seemed to compound the chaos, and I watched it all unfold, silent, invisible, omnipresent. She began to isolate herself. Gone were the nights of laughter with strangers in exotic cities. Gone were the careless smiles in public spaces. She refused invitations, cancelled meetings, and avoided any interaction that might expose her incompetence or deceit. Alone, she would pace her apartment, muttering to herself, checking and rechecking finances, her phone buzzing endlessly with reminders of obligations she could no longer meet. Her body reflected her inner turmoil. Hair tangled, skin pale, eyes hollow. She had aged years in months. She looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the person staring back. I could feel her shame radiating, thick and suffocating. Every time she caught her reflection, she recoiled slightly, as if the person she had become was a stranger she could not tolerate. And I was there, watching, seeing everything, knowing everything, unable to interfere but relishing every moment of this inevitable reckoning. Money that had seemed limitless evaporated faster than she imagined. Luxury hotels became budget hostels, fine dining turned into instant noodles, and lavish purchases were replaced by borrowed goods she could never repay. The life she had stolen from me was fleeting, unstable, and suffocating. Every attempt to recreate her fantasy life only deepened her despair. And yet, she didn't understand that it was not material wealth that was her punishment. It was the slow, relentless erosion of her soul. Her relationships continued to crumble. Men who had been charmed by her beauty and cunning abandoned her when they realized she had nothing to offer but deception. Friends who had once admired her cleverness no longer trusted her. Colleagues who had relied on her reliability were frustrated by her mistakes. She was alone. Completely. And I watched her, silent and eternal, as the consequences of her choices tightened like a noose around her life. The psychological torment became unbearable. Every sound in the apartment made her jump. Every knock at the door, every phone notification, every unexpected visitor sent her heart racing. Sleep was elusive, replaced by nightmares where she saw my lifeless body over and over, each iteration more vivid, more cruel. She tried to ignore them, to convince herself it was imagination, but the guilt was too heavy, too real. It infiltrated every moment, every thought, every heartbeat. She started to hear voices, whispers in empty rooms, shadows that seemed to move when no one was there. She would wake in the middle of the night, soaked in sweat, whispering apologies to me, though I was invisible, untouchable, untethered. She didn't mourn me in the way she should have. She mourned herself, the version of herself that existed before she had made the choice to kill. Every action she had taken to escape accountability now circled back like a boomerang, striking her relentlessly. She tried to rebuild her life, but the foundation was rotten. Every job she took ended in conflict or failure. Every friend she attempted to reconnect with reminded her of what she had done, subtly, indirectly, in ways she could not ignore. She was trapped in a life she had constructed through deceit and selfishness, and there was no escape. Every step forward felt like sinking in quicksand. Every attempt at normalcy only reminded her that she had destroyed herself. Alcohol became her crutch. She drank to forget, to numb the constant awareness of her own guilt. But it offered no relief. Instead, it accelerated her decline, clouding judgment, eroding health, and making every decision more desperate, more reckless. She began to lash out, both at herself and at those around her, unable to cope with the mounting weight of responsibility she had so carelessly discarded. And then came the moments that were almost poetic in their justice. She would misplace money, lose important documents, or fail appointments she had promised to keep. Each mistake, each failure, was a reminder of the life she had stolen and the consequences she could not avoid. She had sought to escape accountability, but it followed her relentlessly, invisible but undeniable. Her nights were haunted not by me, but by herself. She would stare at the ceiling for hours, replaying the night she killed me, imagining every possible outcome, torturing herself with the knowledge that she could have chosen differently. The weight of her own choices became unbearable. Every plan she made unraveled, every dream she pursued crumbled, and she was left to confront the person she had become. I watched her spiral further. Friendships dissolved, romantic relationships failed, jobs ended in failure. Every opportunity she touched seemed to slip through her fingers. The life she had imagined, the freedom she had sought, became an elaborate illusion that collapsed the moment she tried to grasp it. Her guilt, paranoia, and isolation formed a prison that no money or travel could escape. By now, she was unrecognizable. Her confidence, charm, and ambition had been replaced by fear, anxiety, and desperation. Every choice she made, every lie she told, every attempt to manipulate others, only reinforced the consequences of her original betrayal. And I was there, observing it all, silent, unseen, but fully aware. Her self-destruction was complete. She had killed me for travel money, thinking it would grant her freedom and happiness. Instead, she had constructed a life of misery, isolation, and relentless guilt. Every step she had taken to escape responsibility had tightened the chains around her own existence. She had become the prisoner of her own choices. And I, reborn and immortal in awareness, watched it all. Not out of cruelty, not out of desire for vengeance, but out of clarity. The universe has its own way of balancing the scales, and in her case, the punishment was perfectly aligned with the crime. She would live with the weight of her actions every single day, unable to escape, unable to rest, and unable to find peace. I realized something profound as I observed her. True punishment is not inflicted by others, it is borne by oneself. The guilt, the fear, the paranoia, the isolation, these are far more effective than any revenge I could have enacted. And she had earned every second of it, every sleepless night, every pang of regret, every moment of self-loathing. Her life became a cautionary tale, not for others, but for herself. Every interaction, every choice, every step was a reminder of the woman she had once been and the woman she had destroyed. And I was there to witness it all, silent and eternal, a living testament to the consequences of betrayal. She had killed me for travel money. But the life she had gained was a curse. And I, reborn and free, would watch her live with it forever. I watched her stumble through the ruins of her own making. Every decision she had made since killing me had led to this. Every lie, every stolen penny, every indulgence she thought would soothe her conscience had only deepened the void inside her. She was unraveling in ways she couldn't hide. Her beauty, once effortless, had faded into something strained, almost grotesque in its desperation. Her confidence had been replaced by hesitation. Her laughter was forced, brittle, hollow. She was living, yes, but only just, like a candle flickering in a hurricane. And I watched. I had no hands to strike her, no voice to curse her, no power to make her fall. Yet I had the ultimate advantage, the truth. I had life's sharpest weapon, the silent, invisible knowledge of her every mistake, her every fear, her every self-inflicted wound. The world around her had become a reflection of the choices she had made. Friends abandoned her. Men left her. Every opportunity ended in failure. Every plan crumbled. Even the small pleasures she had once taken for granted, food, comfort, warmth, felt tainted. She could not escape the shadow of what she had done. And that shadow was me. Not as a ghost, not as a haunting, not as a scream in the night, but as awareness. The invisible witness. The truth she could never deny. I was everywhere and nowhere. I existed in her moments of panic, in her sleepless nights, in the tremor of her hands as she counted money she no longer had. I existed in the echo of her own conscience, which had become her jailer. She tried to move on, as if distance and distraction could erase the past. A new city, a new apartment, a new job. She chased freedom like a shadow, but freedom cannot be stolen. It cannot be bought with blood. The world demanded accountability, and she had none. She had traded my life for an illusion of happiness, and now that illusion had collapsed. Every door she tried to open led to a wall. Every relationship she pursued ended in deception or disappointment. Every breath she took was a reminder that the life she had stolen could never truly be hers. I saw her sit alone in her apartment one night, a cheap bottle of wine in her hand, staring blankly at the floor. Her phone lay nearby, buzzing with notifications she ignored. Messages from friends she had betrayed, reminders of debts she could not repay, emails from her workplace that exposed her incompetence. All of it created a symphony of failure that played endlessly in the room. And she listened, helpless, trapped, consumed. That was when I understood the true nature of revenge. Not the violent, physical retaliation she might have imagined in some movie or nightmare, but the slow, inexorable decay of the person who had committed the crime. She had sought to gain something from my death: money, freedom, adventure. Instead, she had gained self-inflicted punishment. She had trapped herself in a life of anxiety, fear, and guilt. And I, reborn in awareness, could see it all, savor it all, and understand the ultimate truth. Revenge is most powerful when it unfolds without interference. She began to lose touch with reality. The lines between truth and fear blurred. Every shadow seemed to move with intent. Every sound was a threat. Every glance from a stranger became an accusation. Her paranoia grew so intense that she sometimes spoke aloud to empty rooms, apologizing to me for things I could no longer feel. And I was there, witnessing it all. Silent, invisible, omnipresent. She could not sleep. Every night, she relived the moment she poisoned me, the night she ended my life for her own gain. She imagined different endings, ones in which she had been caught, ones in which I had survived, ones in which she had turned back and spared me. But the truth was immutable. She had made her choice. And that choice had consequences she could never undo. Her friends began to notice. Colleagues whispered. Family members recoiled. Even strangers seemed to sense the change in her. The charm that had once protected her, that had allowed her to manipulate the world with a smile, had vanished. What remained was a person stripped bare, exposed to the consequences of her own actions, a living testament to the inevitability of justice. And I watched, fully, completely, understanding that the most exquisite form of revenge is not a punch, a scream, or a curse. It is the slow, painful, inevitable realization that one has destroyed oneself. She had killed me for money, for dreams, for adventure. And in doing so, she had sentenced herself to a life of fear, anxiety, guilt, and isolation. Months passed. She attempted to rebuild. She moved cities, tried new jobs, sought new friends. But the pattern persisted. Each lie she told compounded the last. Each decision she made deepened her own prison. She could not escape herself. She could not escape the weight of the life she had taken from me. Every step she took, every breath she drew, reminded her that she had traded my life for an empty existence. I began to understand my own rebirth. Death had not ended me. It had given me clarity, perspective, patience, and insight. I was no longer bound by the weaknesses of flesh. I could observe without interference. I could see the truth without distortion. And that truth was that her punishment was perfect. Not cruel in the conventional sense, but inevitable, unavoidable, unstoppable. She began to break down completely. The hollow confidence, the forced smiles, the rehearsed charm, all vanished. She would wander through the streets of her new city, speaking softly to herself, muttering apologies for actions I could no longer hear. She had become a ghost of herself, a woman trapped in the echo of her own guilt, haunted not by me, but by the consequences she had created. And in that haunting, I saw the ultimate lesson. The person who kills for selfish gain never truly escapes. The life stolen, the trust broken, the love betrayed, all of it returns, not in a direct blow, but as a mirror that reflects the devastation back onto the perpetrator. She had killed me for travel money. But what she had really bought was herself, a lifetime of paranoia, guilt, and despair. And I was free. I did not need to touch her. I did not need to whisper threats. I did not need to haunt her in the traditional sense. I simply existed, observing, understanding, and savoring the justice that life itself had delivered. My body may have died, but my awareness endured. My mind was sharp. My judgment clear. And in the final reckoning, I realized that true power lies not in action, but in patience, observation, and understanding. She had thought she could escape accountability. She had thought she could buy freedom with my life. She had thought she could steal the world without consequences. And she had been wrong. Every misstep, every failure, every fear, every sleepless night, every pang of guilt, it all belonged to her. I watched as she crumbled under the weight of her own choices, as life itself became her executioner, and as the person she had once been faded into nothing. And I smiled. Not with cruelty. Not with vengeance in the traditional sense. But with understanding. Peace did not come from revenge, from violence, or from the world delivering punishment. Peace came from watching the consequences unfold exactly as they should. She had destroyed herself, and I was reborn to witness it. She had killed me for travel money. But in doing so, she had sentenced herself to a lifetime of living with what she had become. And I was free. The ultimate revenge is not a punch in the face, a scream in the night, or a curse uttered in fury. The ultimate revenge is silence, observation, patience, understanding. It is the knowledge that life itself has a way of balancing the scales, and that sometimes the most profound justice comes not from intervention, but from the inexorable unfolding of truth. She would live with her guilt forever. She would never escape the shadow of the life she had taken. And I would remain, reborn and eternal, watching, knowing, and understanding the full measure of her punishment. Because, in the end, I had been killed for travel money. She had lost far more. And I had won.